What's up, everyone? Thanks for having me here. It's always amazing to see so many people so into something I've been so deeply obsessed with since a very young age, and it's really personal. It becomes more than just washing hash or growing plants and selecting and pheno hunting. It becomes an extension of your body and who you are and what you're thinking, what you're trying to achieve. So today, I wanted to do kind of an in-conversation with you guys rather than me talk at you. It's talk with you. And I have some guidelines I'm going to go over. And the main thing that I want to just kind of get across from you guys is whether you know everything or you know very little, hash making is something you have to work at constantly. It's a constant. It's a continuation of your evolution as you work through problem solving and selection of better phenotypes that help you make better hash and everything in between that goes along with that. So where that really starts is really in cultivation. You want to be really tight with your cultivation. You want to look at the people around you, what they're doing, what they're paying attention to. There's protagonists and antagonists when you're dealing with feeding a plant. You have to pay attention to things that have a call and response to one another. That's why saprophytic fungi, having a really great base for your fungi to grow, and paying attention to all of these things, brewing the right types of teas, talk to each other, learn. When I was your age or younger, when I was 18, 17, 15, I had people word of mouth within a 15 mile radius I could ask questions to. And even then, the elders didn't want to talk. So I think it's important to share ideas. Don't feel like you have something proprietary, because you don't. It's all shareable. This is like music. You got to learn the dexterity, you got to learn the chords, you got to learn how to put it together. But at the end of the day, you all have a voice. It's all singular. But together we create a community. So one thing I want to get across is passion. I say this a lot. Passion creates ritual. Ritual creates community. Hash making is a ritual. That creates a community. This is what we are. So when you're thinking about cultivation, extraction, it's a symbiotic relation. You can't have one without the other. So think about these things when you're selecting material. Go to your farmer, go to your garden. Look at the structures of your plants. Look at how the resin's starting to form. Get in there with a loop. Start to understand that as your plant gets into the flowering cycle, you as a hash maker have so much against you. You have chlorophyll, you have contaminants, you have shit flying in the air that's going to stick to the plants. That's all going to show up in the resin. And there's nothing you can do about it unless you are proactive about it. So environment matters. What you're putting on your plants matter. Defoliation matters. When you have secreting water that comes out, you have other things that come with it from the plant, such as chlorophyll, such as other contaminants. So what I recommend for most cultivators is once you have your beautiful selection done, day 21, you want to defoliate as much as you can. Day 25, check up on your work. Day 45, look at it. That's the last chance you're going to get before you should be going into flower. Any type of pulling leaves at the end, in terms of preparation, will freeze. Once that thaws, that all drops into the water. Just working against you. So think about those things when you guys are all harvesting and starting to get your stuff prepped. Because preparation really, truly matters. Any bit of larf, again, it just makes your job harder as a hash maker. When you're in pre-harvest, you just want to pay attention to these things, man. And we didn't, in the very early days, man, we didn't understand soil temperature, canopy temperature, leaf temperature, room temperature, room RH. You guys are super spoiled, man. You guys get to really dial it in. And beyond that, you have amazing varietals at your fingertips at all times, man. The early days of me washing hash was making stupid mistakes and growing terpenoline forward varietals, because that's what the elders were like, this is the fire, right? And we learned over time that 2% yields and getting beat up over that all the time or below just wasn't it. So I just encourage you guys to pay attention to all these things. Select, pop seeds, search things. Don't go to clone banks. Make your own clone bank. You don't have to look towards others. Look inward. These are the things that I think are gonna really help you guys kind of find your own voice in all this. And I've been selecting varietals since the mid '90s, and I've kept a handful of these things around, and it's been nice to see the evolution of things around me, and then look back to those genetics and know that those are still very, very, very contemporary varietals if you look at the profiles. So don't think that someone has something you don't. One thing I've learned from going to different states and different places and building labs is not everyone is on the same page at all. Even though you've been doing it for 50, 60 years, there's a lot for everyone to collectively come together on, such as harvesting and cold processing and freezing techniques, and all this stuff really, really matters, man. It's, the older self in me doesn't want to say it, but it's, hash is truly a cold chain product. So I'm gonna move into preparation. It's the most underlooked thing that I see around. When you're packing bags, you want to make sure that you're not allowing the material to ever have any condensation on the bags themselves before they go into freezing. What that'll do, I think Kaya touched on this before, it'll create crystallization of other ice structures. What that does is damages your heads. It makes your hash runs that would seemingly be amazing subpar. A bunch of sapphire in your mind, you're thinking it's all diamonds. So be diligent about your timing, be diligent about your temperatures, and make sure that you move quick. And get a process down that works for the size of harvest that you can handle. And if you can't handle it, don't try to be He-Man. You and 3 people can't take down 8 tables with 72 plants or 62 plants on it, 42 plants, whatever your goal is. It's just too much, and you're gonna suffer as a result. So please just lean on each other. Teamwork makes the dream work is the key. All right, so I'm gonna jump into actually like some cold room ideology, things that I think about, things that work for us. I know everyone has their own thought about cold room. Question, go ahead.
On the pre-harvest,
yeah.
I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on depriving the plants of water towards the end of the harvest?
There's been no evidence whatsoever that depriving any water from the plant has on a consistent basis proven to be helpful.
So on that same note with depriving of water, what about like with what do you say with the dropping of temperatures to like an extreme amount, not just like a lower amount?
Sure. So I think in terms of terpenoids and just the aromatic compounds, I think that's helpful. And when you're dealing with the volatiles, I think most people don't do this, and it's a good call out for you. We drop our temperatures down to 68. That's where we hold it. We try not to go below that because microbes can grow. That's a really dangerous place to sit. I just want to call that out for everyone in the room. This is a dangerous move to be doing, but it's really rewarding at the end of the day if you can nail it. Depending on where you grow, you have different microbial counts and different things. If you're regulated, if you're not, then this doesn't really matter for you. But just understanding that, and it's really important, man. Temperature and the way that these plants grow, if you historically look at where these plants come from in the world, I was talking to Rob Clark on Friday morning about this, and we had a deep conversation about a lot of these areas are mountainous, right? They're cold, man. When these plants are finishing, it's already well below 60 degrees. It's actually in the 50s. Like Nepal in the mountains, all these, even Afghanistan, it gets cold, and the hash makers, if you look back, they didn't use water. It was cold, man. This is cured material that they were beating at sub-zero temperatures to make hash in drums. You have to think about it all the way back. Resin, even dry sift, is still not technically room stable. Still trace amounts, millitor amounts of water in it. So those are the things you have to pay attention to. Temperature matters. Look back to the I mean, history tells us, man, it's all around us. You know, look at all the countries and all the places in the world that most of these varietals come from. Look at equatorial lines. Look at the places, you know, over in the Middle East. And just look at the cultures, but beyond that, look at the environment, man. It tells a story. So, back to hash. All right. So, one thing I wanted to kind of touch on before I go further is economics a little bit with y'all. I think it's really important for you guys for you to be successful. It took me 20 years to learn this. Cost per pound to yield, to labor, to ice, to equipment costs, you all have to learn how to model this shit out. Excuse my language. It's super important, man. No one taught me this. I had to learn and fail and fail and fail. So one thing I want to instill in you is that learn your costs. If you don't know exactly what your gram costs you to make, immediately, you're not doing it right. So unless you're making it for your head and you just want to make hash, and then just none of that matters. Because it didn't matter for me for almost a decade. So.
How do you factor in like equipment breaking and like needing new bags and stuff in your cost?
That's a good question. So the way that I've done it is we made data sheets, right, of all the stuff we used over a 6-month period. This is how we started to get to learn, because we don't come from that world, right? We're hash makers, we're growers. We're artists, we're musicians, we know our craft. So what we did is we said, all right, we're gonna do from here to here, we're gonna mark down every day how much we use and what we're using it for. And then we got it all for 6 months, and then we times that by another 6 months. And we're like, cool, now we know what a year kind of roughly cost us, right? And then we had a dude come in that made a spreadsheet with us, and then he jammed it on there, and he showed us how to kind of populate it, and then we just learned from there, and just slowly learned. Like, all right, now we have these vessels, right? Now we're doing, you know, it came from, here's the reality of it, it came from 5,000 grams a day, 10,000 grams a day, 15, 20, 25, 30, to 100,000 grams a day, right? And all that stuff started to get really real for us. And we were making so much material and we didn't know, right? So my best advice for you guys is to know. Always know. So then you're homies and you're not fighting over anything. It's clear as day. So that's my best advice. So I really wanted to get that in for y'all, because it's, you know, like Kaya touched on this yesterday, and I thought it was really awesome of him to kind of talk about that, you know, as we get, I'm 40s, man, I'm in my 40s. So it's a different world for us now. So let's talk about cold rooms. So cold rooms, everyone has a different ideology of what cold rooms are. Some people believe 40 degrees are cold rooms. Some people believe that below freezing are cold rooms. They all have a different purpose, and they all have a different, outcome of the hash that you'll get from these temperature ranges. When you're at 40 degrees, you're working against yourself. I really want to point this out. I go back and forth with Pure Pressure and all these other companies about this, but we wash 100,000 grams a day. So when I see things live and direct, we wash at 32 degrees below zero. So we are below zero washing all the time. Our whole room is this way. We wear Carhartt suits. We're in there for 16 hours a day. People think we're crazy, but the work is a lot easier, and I mean that. Collection is a lot easier. Moving and cleaning bags is a lot easier because you're at temperature, and you're going to literally drop that material from 40 degrees to below zero. So you're now going to do that in a freezer already. So why are you making a peak and valley value for yourself and actually allowing the compounds to basically volatilize? So if you keep things at just look at it it's like when COVID happened, I started laughing because I was like, they're talking about flattening the curve. That's what I talk about all the time with freeze drying. You know, so, but yeah, like don't create peaks and valleys. It's just like your environment in your grow room. You want it as close to an even keel, and we know that a straight line doesn't exist in nature, right? But we try, we're human, right? So understand that flattening that curve for you and making sure everything's at temperature is only gonna benefit all of you in your hash. It's going to make sure that you don't start the peak and valley train that ultimately is working against you. Keep that stuff at temp. It's gonna hurt you a little bit to work in that environment, but I guarantee you after 2 months or a week, you'll forget about it. There's a saying, unless there's no bad weather, there's just the wrong gear.
How do you keep your water lines from freezing?
We use a chiller that's inline through the wall. And we have two 500-gallon tanks that are outside. Actually, we have 5 of those. And we use 2 of those for washing that goes through a chiller that goes into a bucket or another holding container on the inside of the room. And we have a 20 by 30 washroom that we wash in. So we have it's a lot of feng shui in there. There's a lot of room, a lot of space to move stuff around.
Is it an actual walk-in freezer?
Yes, we built it though. It was actual panels that we had built and fabricated. So we fabricated a 20 by 30, and that's how we do our washrooms now. And then we just multiply those actually. So we have 2 of those going now. And then we have a 20 by 30 with, that's just the freezer for our holding material. And that fits 4,000 pounds at a time. And that's all organized by row with metric tags and dates, and then processing days. I plan out, I'm at the stage now where I plan out the next 8 months of washing based on working with farms and their planting schedule, their harvest schedule, our pickup, and our just the whole thing.
Are you guys machine washing that 100,000 cubic?
Yes, yeah. So I worked with Pure Pressure, not to say that that's not an incredible unit. I think what I've learned from washing with a spoon to literally, I used to hand wash, like for real. I used to literally put my hands in and hand wash. And I have arthritis in my thumb because of it. It's ridiculous, but I used to really believe that was like the most gentle way to get closest to the material. And then reality hit me, and I started realizing that I can paddle. And then once Ben and I started ideating on collaboration of this access, I realized that is like an instrument. That's like a drum machine. It's like a synth. It's like a guitar. It's the closer I get to it, the more I understand it, and the more it's an extension of you and the things you think about. There are algorithms you can set for it. You can set sine waves, square waves, triangle waves, whatever. And then you can set settings. You can actually do it with a flick of the wrist now. But those are the things that have helped me grow, and I've embraced these things because of that. So is there a learning curve for all these things? Yeah, it's a different ideology. Yeah.
Can you just specify that it sounded like you're working in negative 32 Fahrenheit?
We're working in below zero at 32.
At 32.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes it goes to 18. Certain varietals, like if it's really greasy, we'll drop that thing as low as it'll go. Is it painful to work, 8 hours in that? Not really. Like there's just only bad gear. So wash times. Wash times is an interesting conversation I have with a lot of other friends of mine. Some people are stuck on 40 minutes hand wash. Some people are stuck on 10 minutes machine wash. There's really no wrong answer to this. I think when you're getting into from hand paddling to a machine, you think that you need to go 40 minutes. You think you need to go really long. You have to think about the force. The amount of force in the machine like that, there's no human that's going to be able to do that. The other thing I like about machines is as your force goes up, your wash times go down. And you don't need to be as rough. Like when I see these ospreys like cranking like crazy, it just like gives me anxiety. It's too much. It's too much force. You don't need to be whipping your material around like the old washing machines that we came up with, that we used to repurpose.
Can you talk a little bit more on that agitation and what you're doing
Yeah.
with that?
So agitation over a longer set point that's gentler will rip less of your stalks and less of the chlorophyll, less of the contaminants, the fibrous material that comes off the plant. So if our goal, if you think about the theory of our goal, it's to gently sieve off the surface area just what we're looking for and leave the rest behind.
Any thoughts with like iceless being that like there's more or less agitation or I guess aggression?
Yeah, so I was talking about this with the guys when I first got in. Ice is fine if you have environments that are not desirable. You have to understand the purpose of using ice. It was to get things to temperature. It is not for agitation. It has nothing to do with what we're doing at all. In fact, it actually works against you all the time. It collects things in the matrix. It holds resin back. That you already have enough working against you with the material that if you can truly work in an 18 degree to 32 degree environment, you don't have sweating at all. There's no sweating. Because like I talked about earlier, the curve, you're flattening the curve. So that's the kind of stuff I'd recommend we use very little ice. And the only reason we use very little ice is because we work at temperature. It's the other thing. We need to move fast. It's all about turnover for us. We treat it like a restaurant. We're turning over every batch. So ice slows us down, doesn't really help us. It becomes problematic, and it costs money to make. So we try to cut it out. Most of the time, we actually take that ice and put it into our reservoir. That's typically all we do with it. And then just to help it get cool right before it hits the chiller, and then it goes into a collection container that we keep on ice.
Do you have any thoughts or pushing forward? You touched on chlorophyll.
Yeah.
Maybe do you have an opinion on temperature versus agitation and kind of keep chlorophyll out of your hash?
Yeah, so the best way to keep chlorophyll out of your hash is to do the work before you drop your material in as much as possible. Like I said, defoliate, clean up your material. Select towards varietals that don't have a ton of larvae. That's going to help you. And then beyond that, the temperature time variant question, I think it has to do with your environment, and it has to do with it has to do with the force that you're using and you're in paddling, right? And that's a huge gap, man. Like, you're gonna paddle way different than the dude next to you versus this cat over here and versus me, right? So time has to do with you and you paying attention to us. Like, I encourage you to put a timer. Have a friend next to you with like a notebook and start to understand the varieties around you, because that'll help you get closer to what those things can handle. Because it is varietal specific. You have to remind everyone in the room, like, we are all sort of growing the same things, but we have very different cuts, most of the time. Like, I collect all these cuts, man. I send this stuff I work with Kevin over at Medicinal Genomics. Rarely does a lot of this stuff hit for the exact same carbon copy. Rarely. So understanding that for you, I think, is really important, and I encourage everyone to take that data point down. For us, it could be 15 to 18 minutes of wash time, right? It could be anywhere, hand paddling can be anywhere from 25 minutes to 40 minutes, right? So that's our range for what we're doing, but there's a big spread of varietals that we've honed in to get that range.
A little backtracking, but do you have a size-wise that you would kind of limit, like no colas, you break them down to like a certain size when you're doing your tractor?
Yeah. See my phone right here?
Yeah.
Nothing small, bigger than this. Nothing. If it's bigger than this, they haven't really done their job. They're kind of lazy.
And you see when you get something of that size?
We break it up ourselves, actually.
Yeah. would you notice like people argue saying that you're not getting all the trichomes on the inside of a bud on that size, like your phone? Like you have people saying that you can go golf ball size or smaller.
So that's a good question. I think as you wash, that's going to naturally open up. That's another thing we can talk about quickly is like, you don't want to help your stuff break apart, because if you're doing many washes, by your like third wash, it could be to the point where it's soup, right? And it's just like, there's just tons of fiber and all kinds of stuff coming out. So, you know, like for instance, when we use that machine, I was super gentle, you know, and you could see it gently opening up, these bigger flowers opening up, and I was pointing it out to the guys. And you could get a lot of washes out if you're gentle versus a couple washes that are just like super intense.
Would you say the quality of resin on the inside of the buds is definitely of less quality? Do you think that that's...
So the question is the quality of resin on the inside less than the outside of the flower? I would say that's inconclusive and no one really knows. But in the same breath, I would also say that surface area is important, as we all know. And the more surface area you can give yourself, the better chance you have is to grab that.
My question is, when you do your washes, you mentioned longer and more gentle instead of harder and faster.
Yep.
When you do that, do you only do like one wash, or do you do multiple washes?
So the question is, do we separate our washes? So yes, we do. We separate all of our washes, and when you do your first wash, there's a ton that gets caught in the matrix. So much. It's just sitting in there. It's just sitting on your flower. You don't even know it. It's in the ice, it's in the crevices, it's in all these spots that you're not able to rinse through. That's why I always recommend to rinse through, like really rinse through if you really want to do it. We tend to just recirc and drop it for a second time. And we try our best to reuse our water. We really do. I mean, it's really important to conserve water, guys. Like the amount of water we go through it's insane. So any little bit we can do to help that, we're all about. It's why we try not to make so much ice. There's a lot of reasons why we try to be more eco-conscious. But yeah, we separate everything. We still pull Wally bags, and then we grade everything out. We don't, depends on what you're doing. Like, if you want to make THCA, I would recommend grabbing a little of the 45, get a gram to that for every gram. It'll help nucleate really fast. We've done a lot of long-term studies on stuff like that where, yeah, but it's just a little bit, because it's nucleating it. It's helping it happen faster, yeah. Especially when you're trying to make patties that are buttering out, because we don't leave our patties out. We put them in a jar for them to butter out. We don't lay out trays. We put them in 64s and then stack those. So.
What machine are you using?
We use the Axis. We use multiple Axes, actually.
As far as pressing,
Yeah.
other than just the saving time aspect, is hand manual operation less consistent than a
Yeah. Hell yeah.
computer operated?
Oh yeah. Yeah, so hand press or hand crank machines are really great if you're making hash at a certain scale. If you're the guy and you are in tune with your instrument, it's like, dude, back to the music. If it's you and your instrument, all day long, pump it, use it, love it, feel it, understand it, learn about the resin. It's the best way to learn about the resin. And then they can be translated to hydraulics and all the other things you want to do. You know what I mean? It's just like playing music. You can translate it to anything.
What would you say to someone that's just getting into that side of the industry and they're trying to balance what they're investing and where? Namely, rosin presses, if you're talking, $4,000 for something where you're hand operating versus $8,000. How important is that to put that investment there?
I think, look, man, you're talking to a guy who used to go make everything by hand, all right? Like, I didn't have any company to buy stuff from. You gotta just, so I'm a big believer in making things. So if you have a budget constraint, all of this is within your fingertips to go build it. You can go get a press for $300 and then get a hand pump and make it. If you can't, and then plates, you can go buy plates for like $100.
If your focus is on getting the highest quality you can from the start, though, is that it?
Doesn't matter, dude. Tools don't matter. That's like telling me that a guitar matters.
Got the right guy about that.
You know what I mean? It doesn't. It's how you play and what you do with it. I want to really preference that to everybody in the room. Your tools are an extension of you. What's here. That's not going to make you better. It's just up here.
How many people does it take to operate 5-axis machines?
2.
So curious, are the terps better in your opinion on LEDs or HPS? Because I'm seeing it go back and forth.
Depends on your varietal environment, nutrient regimen, how you pay attention to the plant and the environment itself. I think that's the most honest answer there. Anyone else have any questions? I'm gonna keep moving then. So another thing about water is that it's your carrier. Less water means less chance of grabbing and carrying that stuff through. You gotta remind ourselves that people always love to say, oh, well, you guys are using water. That is a solvent. Well, sure, in science, sure. But it's not acting as a solvent, it's acting as a carrier. So the more carrier you have, the better chance you have for that stuff to flow through into your bags. So ice to water ratio, 40-70, 30-80, those are good ratios. Okay. So after I do a wash, I let it sit for around 15 to 20 minutes. I like to do that because it allows the material that's been agitated to sit. And then I'll drop it in, and then I'll let that sit for another 15 minutes. So I don't know if anyone does that, but that's how we do it. I just thought that was something that I think is helpful for production. So hopefully it's helpful to you.
How do you feel about like squeezing out your work bag?
No, do not squeeze your bags. You're bringing contaminants, unwelcome contaminants that you're trying very hard to get away from. To remind yourself, you're giving what you get. Right? You squeeze it, you're giving yourself more contaminants. And then on the topic of contaminants, the 190, 160 bag, double those up. Double them up. These screens are not accurate. I don't care what anyone tells you. I love the marketing schemes that people, well, our bags are more accurate than these guys. Stop it, stop, come on. They're all the same. First to third wash, you're gonna start to see a difference anyway. Because it's nylon, it's going to naturally break apart. So replace your bags is my kind of the moral of all this. Use them, but don't abuse them, and keep them clean. We'll get into the cleaning in a minute.
How often are you replacing bags?
We replace them every month at this point, but we wash a lot. So I wanted to touch on terpenes and water solubility. There's been a lot of talk over the years like, oh, well, the terps are just going away in the water. It doesn't translate. Well, scientifically, that's not true at all. Terpenes are not water soluble. If they were, we wouldn't have to emulsify them. We wouldn't have to try to blend them with other things to make them blend into a beautiful bottle of water so people can enjoy them. And have that weird taste that comes along with it. So don't think that your terps are going away on you. They're not. It's very much the varietal, and it's very much your environment. Think about your environment. Remember we talked about cold, right? All those things are airing off. Like all that beautiful thiols and analytes and sulfurs and all these things that we're not testing for, which is predominantly the things we actually love. Versus the call out of like the 12 or whatever we're trying to call the set of terps that we love. So that's one thing I want to just talk about because it's lots of debate on that. So post-processing, freeze dryers. So our freeze dryers, we dry in 6 to 8 hours depending on the need of the particular client or the need of the project or whatever we're trying to do. The way we're doing this is with lab concos. We do not use harvest rights in our particular labs. They are fine machines to use, no shade on any of these things, but they are very, very ineffective in terms of speed and consistency and preserving the terpenes. They're really hard. If you're using a harvest right, I recommend to get a Laboid pump. Use that thing. It'll help you get down to vacuum much faster. And as you get down to vacuum faster, you'll turn it into a gas instead of water. So the other thing to note is, we've been playing around with room stable hash, and it's really, I think you will see more of this stuff as we kind of move forward in the next coming months. But I just want to throw that out there. That is possible. I have done it, and we are doing it. So we can now walk around with 6-star full melt in our pocket and not have to worry about it greasing out anymore. So the reason that is because there's milliliter amounts of water left over in your resin and you don't even know it. The reason we like these instruments is because it helps us become more aware of what's possible. And if I didn't get access to some of this stuff, I don't know if we would know what's possible. And I'm one of these guys that kind of breaks stuff, and my team's like, get him out of here. He's gonna use the freeze dryer, and we need that thing, But you know what, man? That's what we need to do. So I encourage you all to play around and break things and try to question your ideology. Don't think you know everything. I think I know nothing, honestly. I really do. I try to go in every day as if it's my first time all over again.
Quick question on the freeze dryers.
Yeah.
What temperature do you freeze your hash down to before you put it in the machine?
18. Yeah, we put it, typically, Zach will argue with me, but he's like, I like to keep it upwards towards 32, but when I walk into the labs, they're mostly at 18. But we have a dedicated, so lab concos are different than harvest rights. They're not freezers.
No.
They're not. You have to freeze the material, and you can totally ruin everything if you treat it the same that you've treated every instrument that you've used. They're highly customizable, they're highly personable, and there's something I recommend for everyone to look at. And they're not the only game in town. There's other people to use too.
With your freeze dryers,
Yes.
you're saying to get down to a vacuum. Is there a certain
We aim for 100 milliliter.
you aim for 100?
Not saying that it gets there,
Do you
but that's what we aim for.
relate with different
Yes. Oh yeah.
Have you noticed a difference? Some of these people that I've been listening to in the lives are talking about wanting to sit at that 400 mark.
Specific to that machine, though, you have to understand. That machine can only do so much. So one of my trays is like a whole thing.
How thick do you make your freeze dryer trays?
That's a good question. We have done a really good job of trying to mitigate water, right? We keep them. Here's my bro science for you.
It says about halfway up the tray, full tray.
No. We do full trays. Number one, we utilize all of the square footage. So if we're not, there's something severely wrong.
But then stacked all the way up to the top?
No.
Okay.
We're like a quarter of an inch.
Quarter of an inch.
Yeah, we like to keep our patties like. There's a point when it's too much, man.
There is.
A half an inch is way too much. That's way too. You're gonna have to rerun it for a little while.
And what's your finishing temperature on the lap concos?
It's really down there. Like it's below 41. Yeah, it's below 41. I think that's safe. I think I can say that. I was going to talk about pressing and prepping and things like that. If you guys want to talk about that, prepping is the most important thing, man. I think using a 15 micron bag or 36 micron bag, whatever your choice is, I think it's just really up to your resin and up to you. We typically, when we're done freeze drying, we grade everything out, and then we have specific use cases like 45 goes to edibles, or to go to THCA stuff, or the 73 through 120. We don't take 160 ever. That's just not part of our repertoire. That's not considered a part of our master yield sheets, as we call them. It's more of the food grade stuff. I know a lot of individuals like those heads, but for us, it just makes the other products better and keeps us more focused. But grading that stuff out really matters because it gives you an opportunity to organize yourself and to put things in order in your freezers. And I can't stress enough how important being organized when you get a lot of material is. It's so important. You know, I can't tell you how many times we had egos over the years and thought that we were just like, whatever, I'm just gonna come in tomorrow and I'll label it. And you're like, you know. You know, so like it's so important to like just understand that you're only human, your team's only human, and you guys are only as good as the things that you collectively put down as data. That's one thing I wanted to kind of make sure I get across to y'all. Any questions?
What are some of the things you're looking for, like the bag slant or like
Totally. So yeah.
Attack, like
Yep.
key points you're looking for when you're doing compression?
So typically what you look for is how fast that bag's sweating on the first initial touch. When you're at like 5 PSI. When you see 5 PSI and that thing goes immediately like, it's like a animation. It just like comes right out. That's when you know, and then it starts to sweat out. And when it starts to come down, you can see, man, it starts to, what I call blanket. That's when you know, you're like, all right, okay, we have some resin here, we have some oil. But when it starts to like cake and get really slow, you know there's contaminants. You know there's stuff in there. Go ahead, bro.
Just a question on the technique with compressing your paper folding. Like,
We don't paper fold at all. No. So we use parchment on top, parchment up top, parchment down below, 2 magnets on each side, and that's it. And let it come down, boom. There's no directional flow for us. We're seeing a loss of 0.2 to 0.5 per press. And that's over like a 2-year period we collected that data. Not just like, and my cousin had to fight me on it, so. Zach.
What are your thoughts on pneumatic versus hydraulic presses?
Honestly, man, it's whatever your squeeze is. It's like analog versus digital. You make amazing things out of both. Look, if you're hot washing or you're washing in a room that's like this, you know, which I know a few of you probably are, it's not a bad thing, man. You'll get there. It's all progression. Marcus and I used to wash it outside in the sun. So from my perspective, we've come a long way, and I think as you build towards your end goal, and if you keep dedicated to your craft, which is another thing we'll touch on later towards the end, you'll get there, man. You just gotta stay true to what your vision is and true to what you want, singularly inside. You have an idea that you wanna try to keep the terps. Start thinking about it. Oh, maybe I can use a freezer. Maybe I could go freezer next to me. You know, in the early days of air drying, we had to make whole rooms that were climate controlled with refrigerators in there that were gutted, that we made like, you know, trays, and we could put those on, you know, microplane those and then put them inside of those. So that's, you know, you have to understand that you're gonna get there just as we all have evolved. Ovens. So ovens for post-processing. We have been using the AI ovens. I think that's something that we don't use cascades. They're fine, but we don't use those. And depending on what you're trying to do, I think all these textures are really interesting. I think from fresh press, which is one of my personal favorites, I think it retains the most character from the actual representation of what I saw in the plant, and is not changing that. There's no oxidation happening. There's no disruption of the chemicals that are there and present. As you move into a cure, you're burning those things off. They are going to volatilize and go. The moment you open that top up, they are volatilizing. It's not like you're saving anything, just so we're clear. And that's by design. So these things are all amazing representations of these varietals and these cultivars. And it's not better or worse, they're just different. And everyone has something that they connect with. Some people love monoterpenes because they smoke flower. Some people love the sesqua and monos together. It's It really depends on what you want and what you like. I find a lot of people love cold cure these days. I'm still in between. I love them both, but if I have a choice, I'm going towards a fresh press. So ovens, when we're doing like a real Percy sauce kind of thing, we move up in temperature over time from 80 Fahrenheit all the way to 135. And that could be over a month period, right? Think about it like we talked about the washing, right? And you're gonna go home and do this and be like, fuck this, guys, nothing's happening. Right, for like 3 weeks, nothing's happening. And then all of a sudden, boom, it starts to happen. That's the kind of stuff you wanna try. We are here for the volatile compounds, right? So when I hear people like, yo, I'm getting to like 210 and like crashing it out, cool. But you're crashing out what compounds and you're removing what compounds. Just understand that you're choosing your path and the result is by design, not by, oh, I'm gonna do it better next time. If you do the same process over and over and over at the same time with different cultivars, you're just gonna get the same results with different cultivars.
You're talking about ovens. What's your thoughts on rosin parts, the formulations that you were making?
I knew this was gonna come up. So I made the rosin cart for PAX, right? We kind of joined forces a year ago. They reached out and were like, I was partnered with them in Massachusetts just on a brand partner level. And I was doing rosin with their stuff because it was the most accurate temperature at the time. You have to understand that nobody was making 2.4 volts at the time. It was all too hot, it was all wrong. It was the wrong diameters, everything was wrong. So when I started filling those and started getting really close with understanding what needed to happen, there's 3 different ways to get here. There's keep it together, break it apart, or break it apart, decarb it, bring it back together, right? There's no wrong way to do this. It's just there's the long way and the short way. What I see in most of these when I take an immediate hit, I notice it's this way, right? It's low and slow, which is fine, it's great. These other 2 are more in the jaw, in the face structure. When you take a hit, it's undeniable. So I think that it's an evolution with everyone that's gonna be making these things, and like everyone that goes through evolution, they're gonna find what works for them and what ultimately is right for them. We have found that all of those ways are a good way. And most of the time we break it apart. So that's what we think about. We look at it as an ingredient until it's not. That's kind of how we look at the world around us in our crew. We very much look at this as like, nothing's bad. They're all great. They're just all for different use cases, and they're all have different end goals. And everyone responds and connects with it differently.
Do you think the carts have better taste when you separate the cannabis?
It depends on your varietal, honestly. Look, terpenes have boiling points, right? We all know this, right? And so do thiols, and so do analytes, and so do all these other compounds. When you start naturally heating things up, you're disrupting all of the things that you're working so hard to keep. So I think that's the answer that I have for y'all. We're still super infant, man. Like, this is so early. I want to just invite you all to think about this. I started doing this when I was a young guy, and in 98, 99, and sure, machines have been built and we have learned different traits and different things, but predominantly a lot of this has been the same, you know? And what we've learned over time is that the sharing of ideas in spaces like this is really what spawns things like that to be better and helps us all create better material. So I think it's important for you guys to push yourself, understand that there's a long way to go, such a long way to go. We are still in the infancy of all this, and I want you all to believe that and see that, because we have a long way to go. So please keep making hash. And then I just want to, in closing, I want to talk about cleaning real quick, because I think it's really important before I go in for final questions. Cleaning we have a full day of cleaning per week. like where no one washes, they just clean. And then I have a guy that cleans as we work, because it's a linear process. You want to clean. You want to clean all the time. It's so important how much you have to clean. It's why stainless steel has helped us move faster. We move through hundreds and hundreds of pounds of material much faster because we turn everything over and we have a method for the madness. Clean your bags every time with RO. Work in cold spaces so you don't get things stuck to your mesh. Make sure that every time you use a set of bags, it's a fresh set. Every batch, even if you're recirculating, fresh set. If you're not cleaning, it's gonna hit you in the most unexpected ways like it's hit me before. And I'm in a regulated market now where everything's on the line. The better you are at cleaning, the better you're going to be at making hash at scale.
Yo guys, give it up again for Collin. That was fucking awesome.